Today on Locked On Phoenix Suns, what happened to 3 finalists? Another report about another name in the final round of Suns head coach interviews. David Fizdale? I have no idea. Let's go.
You are Locked On Suns, your daily Phoenix Suns podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back into Locked On Suns. I'm Brendon, Kleen, a staff writer at Awful Announcing and a credentialed Suns media member. Thank you for making Locked On Suns your first listen here on this Friday to close out your week. Don't forget Locked On Suns, free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. Just click that follow or subscribe button. Do what thousands of other Suns fans have already done. Become an everydayer and get locked on to the Phoenix Suns right here each and every day. A new name in the coaching search and a closer look at potentially one of the top KD trade suitors. Joining me to break it all down, as always, from the wonderful West Valley, my fellow Suns credentialed media member. How are we feeling, Ben Garcia?
You get an interview, and you get an interview, and you get an interview. At least if Dave Fizdale ends up getting the job, we can add to the incorporation of our Locked On Suns like theme song, like Locked On Mavs does, and we can insert "Take That for Data," and then have him walk off. We get into that in there. That's not nothing. That's not
true.
Nothing.
That's a silver lining for anybody. When you turn this show on, if he becomes the head coach, it'll sound a little cooler for you. But yeah. So Mark Spears tweeted around 4 o'clock Eastern. Also, like the first words of the tweet, he said, Suns associate head coach and former NBA head coach David Fizdale. Let me just correct it for anybody who saw that. He's not the associate head coach of this team. So just right off the bat, you can tell who this is designed to make look good, right? Okay, so expected to be part of a third round of interviews for the Suns head coach job. The former Grizzlies and Knicks head coach has the support of some key Suns players as well, sources said. So pretty short tweet, but a lot to work with there. I think a lot of layers to that, Ben, because first off, you were doing the Oprah impression at the beginning, but like, to me, what are we doing with the second versus the third round at this point if it's up to 6 names in this last round who are getting these in-person interviews, which I would assume Fizdale's already were in person. The dude works for the team still. And number 9, it was 9 for the second round. They had 9 people for the second round. I believe it would just be Borrego, Hetzel, and I just had it in my head.
Jared Dudley?
Well, Mike Onori, who didn't make the cut from the second to third round. Dudley didn't make the second round. So to only cut 3 names, it's like, what is even the point here? So awesome. I just was scratching my head and rolling my eyes when I saw this, just because of how silly it makes the whole process kind of feel. But that's just me.
No. It's not just you. I don't like agreeing with you because it's not fun. I was just like, I already thought 5 was too many. And then you added, I thought 4. Honestly, I thought 4 was kind of a lot. Narrow it down to 3. How are you going to be able to separate 4 different guys, in my opinion? And so, but like 4, fine. 5, that's a bit of a crowd. 6 is egregious. Why do you need that many interviews, especially with like, you just had all year to interview him? If you wanted to make him your head coach, why didn't you when you got rid of Mike Budenholzer? And how crazy would it be, Brendon, if for how awful this Sun season was, they promoted internally for both the GM and the head coaching position? Yeah. That would be absolutely nuclear. I guess what I would ask you is, before I get into like, why did they do this now? It said key players. I don't give a damn what Colin Gillespie says. Like, who's the key player? Don't care what Kevin Durant says. Don't care what Bradley Beal says.
Well, it would matter what Kevin Durant says if he's going to stay here.
Yeah, but okay. All right. It's fine.
But he's not going to, right?
Rinhorst just reported today, right? 98% chance. Gambo said yesterday on the air that Bradley Beal and Kevin Durant are not going to be here next year. Like, we're all operating off that. When it said key players, why don't you just say Devin Booker? Because that's the only key player. That's the first thing I thought of when it said that too. It's like key players. You mean Devin Booker. What does it say if Devin Booker is the one that is pushing for Fizdale to be hired? Because he has done this before with Billups, and I forgot who it was the year before.
Kevin
but
Young.
what's kind of your reaction on it? Kevin Young, exactly.
I would say if it's Booker, and yeah, I guess just by deduction you would have to assume that it is. But I guess, like, to be fair, Royce O'Neal, Grayson Allen, those guys are veterans who are here. Maybe it wouldn't be why you hire Fizdale. That you don't make the choice because of what Grayson Allen says. But considering that word is plural, I guess I'll give him the benefit of the doubt and say that he's been around for 2 years. It wouldn't exactly be a shock if more than one of the players liked him. But if Booker's leading the charge on this, what I would just say is you got to be prepared to push back on your best player and display a vision and an alternative to him and convince him. David Fizdale, in my opinion, is not the best candidate to be the next head coach of the Suns. Because of his track record, as he already ran a fairly outdated offense 10 years ago when he got his shot to be a head coach, let alone the modern NBA and everything that goes into spacing and versatility and size and the new form of this game. So you got to be willing to push back on Book, would be what I would say if it's coming from him.
It's almost been 6 years since Dave Fizdale was a head coach. Can you imagine if that's where they go in? Like, if that's the route they go? You had a funny thing you had said on Twitter, and I wanted to get in that in just a second, but I would ask you, why leak it now? Why didn't you just leak all 6 people at once? What was the point of hiding it from everyone?
I don't know. I mean, you could ask that, or you could ask, is it real? Right? Like, how legit of an interview is this, right? Because we've heard all along, and we've talked about it a little bit, that this is a guy, we know that they kept him around last year almost as him doing them a favor because Bud struck out on some guys, according to Dwayne Rankin's reporting. And now they were supposedly including him in this search, potentially because they wanted him to stick around again. So maybe this is all just part of that still. And if Fizdale does have hopes of one day being a head coach again, and he's not that old of a dude, that maybe if him and his agent can say, hey, we were a finalist for the Suns job, maybe that helps him. Maybe he gets an associate head coach job somewhere else. Maybe he gets an associate head coach job here. Maybe he gets a head coach interview next season when somebody has an opening and he can say that he did that. It could be that. I have a really hard time believing that he's a legit top candidate just because we would have heard that by now. But I don't think Mark Spears would just make it up. So that something has to be going on here.
Well, you're right. I guess you didn't say this, but before the show, where like it probably did just come from Fizdale's camp, that maybe they felt like they were not included and they needed that out there because maybe they did want to get him a head coaching job somewhere else down the line.
Or college, for all you know what I mean? Like, it's good for his career if he's a finalist.
Sure, he's 50 years old. You're right. He's not an old dude, but like if we were talking about before Jordan Knott being the guy that none of us want, I don't think it's close. I would much rather have Jordan Knott as the head coach than Dave Fizdale being the head coach of the Suns, and I'm not a big Jordan Knott guy. You had an interesting tweet where you had said they should have just made Dave Fizdale the GM. I know it's not something you were rooting for, but and no one was, right? But like, if you were going to keep this guy around and potentially make him the head coach, why didn't you just make him the GM? He's more qualified than Brian Gregory. I guess I'd be asking you to expand on that more.
Yeah, and I don't know if everybody who saw that tweet or is hearing us talk about it now realizes that he was in Utah's front office for 2 years as an assistant GM. That's why I said it. I wasn't just playing musical chairs here with pick a name and pick a job and make a joke. So that was my point. I kind of wasn't kidding. Like, if they think so highly of him, the GM job is something that arguably, because clearly the leadership and the experience and the connections and the everything else seems to be what they like, well, that's sort of what they sold us that Gregory was great at. So I don't think it's so far-fetched that Fizdale could have been that guy. Obviously, I know the answer. It's a rhetorical question. It's because Brian Gregory's Matt Ishbia's right-hand man, and we know that's why he got the job. He told us that's why he got the job. So it wasn't going to be Fizdale because he doesn't have that same level of trust. But it's just this weird thing of how much they seem to value him, but only to a point. We value enough that we're going to beg you to be an assistant every year, but we're not going to make you the associate head coach or the head coach or the GM or anything. It's just like, we really like that you're around, but that's it. It's odd.
I mean, maybe player relationships is such a big deal for the Suns and they end up hiring him. But I got to be honest with you, Brendon, because this is out now, it does worry me that he might be the front runner for the job. Or I guess I should ask you this. Are you worried at all that he could be the front runner for the job? Because oftentimes, and whether it's a free agent signing or a big trade or a head coaching hire in this instance, where someone comes out of nowhere and ends up just getting the job.
Yeah,
that's kind of what I hope.
Gregory, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But I'm not worried about it
the same thing?
Because here's the thing. I'm going to
You're not? Wow.
You think he's the front runner?
I just don't trust this team. So I wouldn't say he's a front runner, but I am certainly worried that he is in the top 3, if that makes sense. Like the real top 3. Okay, thank God. You listen, man. I hope so, but look, I'm not there.
Let's keep the same perspective throughout the segment. This is coming from David Fizdale, correct? We agree that's probably where it came from?
Yeah.
Right? So the whole tweet probably came from him. The idea that he has support from key Suns players. Matt Ishbia didn't call Mark Spears and tell him that. That would be something you would say to put yourself out there and fluff yourself up. It's, so I'm going to trust my instincts that my post was also, who even is a key Suns player anymore, like that was to point out not just that Booker is the only one we know of, but also just to remind people we don't even know who any players are going to be on this team. So the idea that David Fizdale is beloved by the 3 guys who are overlapping, well, what about the other 12 who are going to have to fill out the roster who have never met David Fizdale in their life? When, we're about to talk about Minnesota, if Jaden McDaniels and, Dante DiVincenzo are on this team next year as the second and third best players, and then some free agents come on and a draft pick here and there, then all of a sudden none of those do. That's not even true anymore. So I don't think that this is suddenly a top player. I do think a top candidate, and I do think though that it's going to be something worth tracking why this got out and why he's been part of this at all. And afterward, if we hear something along the lines of, oh, Devin Booker's not so thrilled about Johnny Bryant, well, then we might know. But for now, I'm going to sort of dismiss it as a guy trying to move his career forward, if that makes sense.
Okay. I'll be honest. I'll close it out with this. I'm more worried about it than you are because this literally just happened with Brian Gregory a month ago. So I hope you're right. You make a lot of good points. But at this point, man, I don't think it's going to shock me if we hear Dave Fizdale, new head coach of the Suns. But like with all this nonsense, man, all you can kind of do is laugh. Your first text to me was WTF, and I knew, something's happening. Someone insane just got hired. Jordanot just got hired, and it was Dave Fizdale out of left field. That's crazy. I feel worse about it than you do, but you make a lot of sense, so I'll give you that.
All right, the Minnesota Timberwolves. Disappointing exit from the Western Conference playoffs. And reporters are already telling us they could figure heavily into the Kevin Durant sweepstakes this summer. Another closer look at Minnesota's options next. First, today's show brought to you by DoorDash, and I have so few tabs open that I can give you the lowdown on DoorDash with no issues today because you know what time it is. It's playoff season, and that means big performances and even bigger rewards, and that means also that DoorDash is bringing the heat with a slam dunk deal for Dash Pass members during the 2025 NBA playoffs. It's called They Swoosh, You Score, and it means that anytime a player drops 50-plus in a playoff game, Dash Pass members score a free 3-piece crispy tender combo from Wingstop the very next day. Just place an order of $20 or more, use the code WINGSTOP50 at checkout, and that combo is yours. Crispy, delicious, and totally free. Offer valid noon to midnight the day after the game. Terms apply. It's hard to score 50-plus this deep into the playoffs, but if there's anybody to do it, it is Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Like, let's just be plain here. The Pacers' defense is going to be worse than Minnesota's. The pace is going to be crazy if Indiana's shown us anything. I think Shai could do it. So sign up for Dash Pass to unlock this and more exclusive deals all season long. When any player scores 50 plus in a playoff game, Dash Pass members can grab a free 3-piece crispy tender combo from Wingstop the next day with a $20 plus order and code Wingstop50. That's Dash Pass, your door to more savings, more flavor, and more ways to win. Terms apply. Coming back, let's talk mini. Let's talk the T-Wolves. Brian Windhorst, Ben, on Wednesday morning ahead of their final loss, but we all saw it coming, reported on Get Up that in the wake of the trade deadline, it became clear just how significant and how hard Minnesota tried to get Kevin Durant at the trade deadline. He pointed out that, obviously, as we've pointed out as well, both the Suns and the Wolves were over the second apron, so it's sort of hard to even imagine what that trade even was going to be in February, but everyone keeps repeating that it was pretty real. He said, you look at the beast that they were up against defensively in the Thunder, and he could see them revisiting a pursuit of KD. Now, there's some things he acknowledged could get in the way of that. We'll get to those, but the last time we talked about the Wolves, Ben, we were a little skeptical just because of how hard it is financially. What are your thoughts now that they did really need some offense in that series? We know the Anthony Edwards relationship is there. It feels like everybody's saying they're going to be major players and they're just going to have to do some magic on the cap sheet in order to get this done. But I want to believe that it's pretty real that they're going to be heard from.
Well, I think Minnesota is a really interesting team because they have picks and players, but they have players ready to like actually play now. Let's say you got McDaniels and you got DiVincenzo. Like those are NBA ready guys. Those aren't what you're waiting for in a potential Smith or Eason. It's going to have to be a 3-teamer though. But for how much Kevin Durant values his relationships, remember, he followed Kyrie. He recruited James Harden. He followed Devin Booker. He recruited Bradley Beal. It feels like that's going to matter a ton to Kevin Durant wherever he goes. And if I'm Anthony Edwards, I apply the pressure of the front office if you want to play with your guy. And you know he does. And I look at Jaden McDaniels, man.
Do we know that? I mean, we don't know that. We don't know Anthony Edwards wants to play with KD. We know they're close, but you said KD values those relationships. That's not something we've ever seen Ant do.
Well, no, I guess you're right. Not something we've ever seen him do, but we've heard him say in interviews before, after games specifically, that like he brings his best every time because he wants to play whenever he plays against KD. So maybe he has affinity of not playing. And
they did spend time in the Olympics last year. Like there's a relationship there. I'm just saying, let's not jump to conclusions that Ant's going to be in Tim Connolly's office with a knife to his throat or something.
Sure. And here's the other thing with the Timberwolves. How do you get better? Or at least how do you shake up the roster? Because you were beaten 5 games to the Mavs and the Oklahoma City Thunder in back-to-back years in the Western Conference Finals.
Yeah.
How do you get better? I think the only way that could raise the ceiling on them, but it's also the most risky. I'm not trying to play that out like it's nothing. I think it is getting Kevin Durant. They're not going to get Giannis. They're not going to get. I don't know if there's anyone
of what we know now, right? Of what we know now. I think the summer there's always players who come loose that we're not necessarily expecting, right? You think about, okay, well, what happened? What does the team that gets Giannis give up to get him? And what do those players end up being? Like Drew Holiday coming back for Dame, and then all of a sudden Drew Holiday's available, right? That's an easy example of what I'm kind of talking about, and that could change things. I mean, to me, what Minnesota needs, like before we get to the difficulties on their books and everything, is I would ideally think that they need another playmaker, somebody that really can handle the ball, break down a defense, set guys up, push pace, things like that. But what Mike Conley basically was like the very first season he got there, but he's just aged and isn't really the same player anymore. Ideally even a better version of year one Mike Conley. That would be the best thing. So if you're asking me that, like, I guess I could look at, hey, could they get Darius Garland if Cleveland decided to trade him? I don't know why they would trade him to another really good team, but that's sometimes how this stuff goes. Could they get Trae Young? Like, that would maybe be where I would probably prefer to look. But Durant is not a bad second second prize if you know you need to get better, and I agree that they do. So I agree they'll probably be in the mix here. Chris Finch, the head coach, said that after the season, the intention is to keep everybody, but that's an easy thing for the head coach to just say and not cause any drama. They're over the second apron right now. They won't be as of the 1st of July. They'll be a little bit under it, but both Randall and Naz Reid have player options that are probably undervaluing them. $31 million for Randall, $15 million for Reid. I think both guys could potentially get more money or at least longer-term security on a new contract. Are those new contracts going to be in Minnesota? Nickeil Alexander-Walker is also in the mix. Windhorst said he doesn't expect them to be able to keep all of those guys. I think that's where you start to run into problems, which brings us to the third team that you mentioned. Who is the Julius Randle team? That's basically the question you're asking if you're talking about a Minnesota deal, because like I just said, he has that player option. He either could opt in and get an extension or he could opt out and get a new contract. I doubt he's just going to play out the last year and take that risk. Where does he go if it's not the Suns? And I guess just for the sake of talking about it, how opposed to it being the Suns would you be?
Well, here's the thing with Julius Randle. Minnesota got a little lucky with this. I'm sorry. I wanted to pull up the Minnesota's entire roster, but one of the things that's really good about Julius Randle is he built up a lot of his stock in the playoffs. This series wasn't great, but he was really good against the Lakers, and he was also really good against the Warriors. Now, Lakers 3 seed, little up and down. Warriors,
he had the best
well,
postseason of his career. I would agree with you.
Exactly. But that last series wasn't great. I just would say buyer beware, because we know the Julius Randle experience. It kind of goes like this. I guess if you'd be able to get more draft picks, would you be willing to take on Julius Randle? And I would say yes, because at the end of the year, or maybe you do flip him to another team, maybe a team that's looking to win now. I don't know what the Pacers are going to be up to after the Thunder series. I don't know what but again, I'm just spitballing. The Heat, he could be the chip you need to get 2 more first-round picks from someone who can afford to have him. I'm not so much looking at Julius Randle of going to the Wizards. I'm thinking of him going to a team that needs another scorer, maybe a third guy who can help them win more playoff games. So that's where I would go with it. I'm not as so opposed to it anymore because I think his stock got rebuilt just a little bit more after that 1 year with Minnesota.
Not opposed to what?
A little bit.
I'm not opposed to the Suns?
Him coming here and then moving him, like making him our
coming here for how long? Because coming here and moving him, that's just called the third team. I'm saying, how opposed are you to him playing games in purple and orange? That's the question. Not involving him in the deal. He has to be involved in the deal. That's a given. That's not really a question for either of us to answer. But him coming here and playing.
I'm not against him coming here. I'm against giving him an extension. So you just be getting rid of him at the end of the year. And will he come here and play for an extension? Or will he just tell everyone, I'm not going to Phoenix without an extension? That might be a thing too. But if he's not willing to do that, then it does have to be a third teamer. I don't know who that is, but I think it's a team who's on the cusp of competing. Maybe in Orlando, they need another shot creator. Granted, they don't really need someone of that size.
Exactly.
It doesn't really
it's
fit
a tough
their
fit.
size.
He's a tough fit. I mean, I think I came up, so there's, like you said, there's the teams with more cap space, right? Like the Wizards, the Hornets, the Nets, some of those teams, Portland and Utah are pretty flexible, whatever, like the bad teams. But he's getting to the point in his career where, he's 30. Like there's no sense for either side wasting his time on a bad team when that's not really necessary. So I think Minnesota could potentially keep him, and they still would have all the assets we're talking about, which, you've referenced draft picks a couple times. They have their 2028 pick and their a couple of swaps that they could re-swap potentially. And then they don't. Their 2032 pick is frozen just like the Suns because they're over the second apron. So that's it. 2028 and then re-swapping some picks. They don't have a lot.
Well, they also have
not much either.
Yeah, they also have other teams' picks that they can trade. They do have their 2026 first round pick. They also have their Detroit's 2025 first round pick. So
this
like
year, 17th overall.
this year.
Yep. So
they have
yeah,
that as well.
I would say 17th overall and 2028 are probably the big ones. And
that's fair draft compensation. Just so we're being clear, McDaniels, those two picks.
But my point is, they could use that stuff to go get an upgrade somewhere else in a trade that may not have to include Randall. The only reason Randall has to be included in a Kevin Durant trade is because he's the only guy who makes enough money to get you close to the salary to bring KD back. But if you're talking about, I don't know, just to throw the example back out that I already did, Darius Garland. Again, I don't know if he's going to be available, but he'd be. Well, then all you send out DiVincenzo and McDaniels, and that's it, and maybe a pick. There's your trade. You don't need to get to 50. So that's again, it's this thing we always come back to with Oklahoma City or Houston or whatever. I think they will make a move. That doesn't mean that they will get Kevin Durant.
Where's Kevin Durant, do you think, on their wish list? You think it's 1 or 2? Because the trade deadline tells me that they wanted Kevin Durant.
Yeah, but I think part of the idea of getting Durant at the deadline would have also been getting off of Randall and not having to be the team to make the decision on his extension, like you and I are agreeing we don't want the Suns to have to do. Everyone wants to play hot potato because Randall, like you said, is so up and down. So that's the hard part. I would say that my guess is a higher priority for them would be a young playmaker, if one of those becomes available. And there's already some names that potentially could. I mean, Ja wouldn't be crazy, right? Like, I don't know. So I think that would probably be the preference. Anthony Edwards is like 4 years younger than me. There's no need to get a 37-year-old in order to go so far in that direction. That's my thought. But let's talk about the Durant side. Where does he want to go? Where should he want to go? Next. All right, Ben, let's close it out. The looming thing over all of the Kevin Durant trade negotiations, I think, the shoe we're waiting for to drop, is basically, is there a list? Will there be a list? If you flash forward to this time 3 years ago, when the Chris Haynes tweet hit that KD wanted to go to Phoenix and maybe Miami, that helped a lot in order for the Suns to ultimately be the team that got it done. Now they gave up the farm, but it clearly changes everything. So we've talked about so many teams at this point, and there's not going to be, I don't think he's going to Oklahoma City or Indiana at this point. So we've basically gotten all the teams that could pursue him are up front now. Where do you think he will want to play the most?
San Antonio. I don't think it's close. I think San Antonio won, if he's putting winning first, which I would argue Kevin Durant has not always done that, because he would have stayed with the Warriors instead of going to the Brooklyn Nets. But he was trying to be his own man and pave his own way. And like, that's fine. We don't need to get into that conversation. The San Antonio Spurs, I think, are in the best position. Like, let's say that they give up 14th pick, Vassell, Sohan, and Harrison Barnes. Like, the absolute, 3 players in the pick that would blow your socks off for a Kevin Durant deal, and you and I would both hop on it. I think like that, but you still have Castle, Wemby, Fox, him. You still have Dylan Harper, who you're going to draft this year. Combine it with the fact that Texas is no state tax. That's always going to be something that people are interested in, keeping more of their money. And I just think Kevin Durant, although you and I both agree maybe there'd be a tough fit there, Kevin Durant is one of the easiest players to figure out those problems, and we know he's not a selfish player. So if I'm picking one team, I think that would be it, because like, if he goes to Minnesota, you're talking about giving up Jaden McDaniels. You're probably losing Naz Reid because you can't re-sign him, or the Timberwolves don't want to go crazy deep in the second apron and pay an insane tax. Like every other team, like Houston is interesting too. I think Houston would be a second, but you got to go somewhere where your team is not gutting the roster to have you. So that's where I would go.
Yeah, well, I mean, if winning is his priority, San Antonio didn't even make the playoffs this year.
Yeah, but with Kevin Durant, another year of Fox, who was injured at the end of the year, Wemby,
Yeah.
third year into the league. I mean, I
So
think
you
it's
think
pretty
they're
clear.
title contenders next season,
Next-
just with adding
next-
Kevin Durant?
Next year with adding, well, not Kevin Durant, they're also adding Dylan Harper, who I think is going to
Well,
be a
he's
very
not-
good player.
You think a rookie
Wait,
guard is going to
wait a
contribute to
second.
a title?
It could. Cooper Flag, we just had this argument not too long ago that Cooper Flag was going to be awesome right out of the gate. Dylan Harper might be as well. Like Stefan Castle, the second year of him, he just came off of a rookie year performance. Like, do I think
I just think that team's really young and jumping from like, even if Vic and Fox had stayed healthy, they were a fringe. They were going to be on the road in the play-in. To go from that to winning a championship, if I'm a 37-year-old and my window might be 1 or 2 years, that feels
sure.
That one is a tough sell. I mean, I can give you my answer too if you want.
Just really quickly, I just
how I would feel about the Spurs.
Sure, let me rebuttal that really quickly. The Suns didn't make the playoffs the year they went to the NBA Finals. They add Chris Paul, an older guy, immediately go to the finals. So I'm just saying, like, it can happen. Suns did it literally with their team. So who would you say?
Yeah. It's kind of just to repeat what I said, I think the last time we talked about this, the East would be my priority by a mile. If I'm Giannis and that means going somewhere within the conference or just staying with the Bucks and biding my time, or it's Durant or it's anybody, I am not trying to be in the middle of this gauntlet of a conference. So to me, it would probably come down to Miami or New York. If I were to say where I would guess that and that's a little bit combining. I guess I would say where would I think he might want to go would be the Knicks. Where do I think he should want to go is Miami. Because I think Miami has better depth to kind of do what you're saying, where still have more left over when they get him. Whereas the Knicks are already thin, and then they'd be making another trade. That could get kind of dicey. So I'll say he will want to go to the Knicks and should want to go to the Heat.
I mean, I'll tell you one thing, man. One of the things that scares me about the Knicks is the Suns, for some reason, taking back Karl Anthony Towns on that team, because then you're talking about starting Brunson, Cat, and then an older KD, who I think is a good defender, but still an older KD. That would just worry me from the Suns' perspective. The East thing is just a really good argument, man. It's a really good argument where the East is just really bad. I wonder how much breaking up the chemistry of like an OG or, God forbid, potentially a Mikal Bridges. I wonder how much the Knicks don't want to do that, but it's clear they've hit their ceiling because they're about to potentially be eliminated tonight. So it's good for the Suns that they're being out. Also, just so we're clear, I think the Pacers, I know you just pushed them to the side a second ago. I think they're a team that could use another scorer, or at least someone that can create their own shot. I don't think it's going to happen either. I'm just saying I think it's something.
Yeah, their identity is so carved into stone, and I think that they're going to be hesitant to disrupt their chemistry and their style of play at all, let alone for a guy who's just going to kind of very much make his imprint with how he wants to play basketball. And it's not just a KD thing. They're not going to be a LeBron team. They're not going to be fill
Steph.
in the blank. There's a lot of teams I don't think that players that they would want to go get just because of that. So, yeah. Is your answer different for where he should want to go, or it's just Spurs or bust? That's just, you're all in.
I would, well, no, if I'm listing a couple of teams, I didn't have the East thing in my head, so I want to give you the credit for that. But the Knicks are interesting because I don't think that they would have to give up like a ton either. They if I'm not mistaken, they still have a couple of picks, as well as OG and who's the other guy that we had talked about in these deals too? OG and someone else. Whatever. Another player is not going to break up the team camaraderie. And I do think if you surround KD with a bunch of like just gritty players like Brunson, who does the dirty work, Josh Hart and Mikal Bridges, like those types of guys, I do think he would flourish there. And they just need someone that can get a bucket, because Jalen Brunson, not a liability at all, but like he can be pushed around a little bit. I think if you add a almost 7-foot shot creator to also Cat as well, I think that helped. And I think it helped with the rim, the rim defense that Cat is so bad at. So I think the Knicks are interesting. And then Minnesota, man, that's I'd go 3, as I really think this guy values his relationships. And I think he would really value playing with Ant. So yeah.
One other one in terms of should versus what he will do. If it were like a vacuum, I would think the Detroit option is a really good one. Now, similar to San Antonio, I don't know if the pathway is there for them to really compete for a championship, even with him in the next couple of seasons. That would be a big ask. Cade is ready, but the rest of that roster, maybe not so much. Maybe Asar is sort of there, but then, Duran's raw, Ivy was hurt all season, etc. But that roster is perfectly ready for a Kevin. I mean, just slide him into what Tobias Harris was doing. It couldn't be more of a natural fit. So if it's just sort of pie in the sky, what I would do if I were him, and just, again, separating out that it's cold as hell and not a desirable place to play and ownership is kind of bad there and everything like that would be pretty fun. But
I would just be curious what they would have to give up that would match. Like, you don't want to give up too much. I know you like Isaiah Stewart, Asar Thompson.
Yeah, we went through it. It would be be Tobias Harris. He makes 26.6, and then if you add Stewart, you're already up to 41, and then from there it's either Asar or Holland, and you're already to 50. So even Fontecchio, if they really play hardball, they got a forward 3-and-D forward Fontecchio who they could throw in there, and then they have picks galore still. That's one of the easier trades to make happen, if I'm being honest.
Okay, I forgot about it. You're right. That's why I remembered Asar. I was talking to Locked On Pistons guy, and he was telling me Asar would never get touched.
Yeah,
so that one was
Holland.
interesting. Yeah, so that one be interesting. I guess I'd be putting my foot in my mouth by saying I don't know if Pistons already compete, but I just said the same thing about the Spurs. I see what you're saying. I just don't think I don't think Katie would want to go there. I'll leave it at that.
No, that's why I said should. That's a should. We talked about what he will want to do. That's what I think he should want to do. Let's close it out there. Hit follow or subscribe if you haven't already. We'll be back for you next week. Become an everydayer so you can be right here when the Suns head coaching news breaks and David Fizdale has his press conference. Enjoy your weekend, guys. We'll talk to you